Hi everyone, and welcome to Dig Deeper, where we're looking at different tools to help us get to know God better as we read what He said in the Bible. This week we're looking at the Who Am I tool, or sometimes known as the Copycat tool. This tool is particularly helpful when we're thinking about what should we do with the things that we're learning about God in the Bible. Essentially it's just asking, who am I in this Bible story? Should I be following the example of this character, or should I be learning from them in a different kind of way? Trying to see how the truths of the Bible are going to shape our lives is an amazing thing to do. It's a fantastic instinct. And the Who Am I tool is going to help us do that in the right way so that we don't get ourselves into trouble. At base, the Who Am I tool is obvious. It's just asking, who am I in this story? Should I be copying the actions of these characters, or should I expect what's happening to happen to me? The Bible talks about a lot of things, but just because something happened in the Bible doesn't necessarily mean that it should happen to everyone, or in fact that it will happen to you and to me. When the story of the flood is recounted in the Bible, that doesn't mean that we should look up and notice the clouds are coming and run to the nearest docklands, for example. Likewise, just because the Bible says that someone does something, it doesn't mean that you and I should do that thing too. Sometimes it will, of course. There are great examples in the Bible. When someone like David prays to God when they're in trouble, that's a really good example for us to copy. It's all over the Bible. But then when the exact same character, King David, commits adultery and kills the husband of the woman he's just slept with, you can be sure that that is not an example that you or I are to copy. It's obvious, isn't it? Not everything that happens in the Bible is a model for you and for me. Sometimes, though, even the good things that characters in the Bible do, and that we know are good and we're told are good things, wouldn't be a good idea for you and me. Like in the Old Testament, where the same character, King David, builds a temple for God, I don't think that means that you or I should build a temple. Or when they sacrificed animals in the Old Testament, a great thing for them to do, doesn't mean that you or I should walk to our local farm with a big butcher's knife. This is an especially important tool for helping us understand what the Bible means for us today. I wonder if we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that the Bible is always about us. I've heard a great phrase once, the Bible is written for us, but not about us. It's totally natural for us to put ourselves into the story, particularly if we're reading something narrative. That's what we do with all of our favourite books, after all. We kind of imagine ourselves as the main character. The difference is that if you've just been reading Harry Potter, you're unlikely to think, well, Harry's just been getting on a broomstick and flying around, so maybe I should try and do the same thing too.
What an idiot.
And yet sometimes we can do that exact thing with the Bible. Assume that the main character is someone that we should copy outright. Sometimes that might be a good idea. Other times you can see how that could be disastrous. So how can we tell the difference between examples that we should copy and examples that we shouldn't? It comes down to a basic rule that my mum always used to say to me. Do as I say, not as I do. It comes back to the author's purpose tool, that king of tools that we mention every week. Does this Bible author want me to follow this example? Have they taken the time to show why this is a really good example to follow? Are they holding up this character as a kind of role model? Have they given details that make me see, yes, this is a really good thing, and they've emphasised it again and again? If they have, perhaps we should copy it. If they haven't, we should be a lot slower to think it's something that you or I should do. If in doubt, an absolutely fail-safe question to ask is, if I followed this, would it contradict something else in the Bible? If another place in the Bible says this wouldn't be a good example to follow, you can bet it's not intended to be a model for us in this place either. I do have a top tip that I find generally useful. It's not a rule, there are going to be exceptions to it, but I think it's a helpful thing to think about. And that's when using the Who Am I tool, usually I'm not the hero of the story. Maybe it's just my arrogance that I can often fall into that trap of thinking that the hero is going to be me. That's not true though, is it? God is the hero of the Bible. He's at the centre of every story in the Bible, and so it's really unlikely that it's me in the middle of it. So when I'm reading a story about Moses, for example, my tendency can be to jump to think I should be doing exactly what Moses is doing. Well, not only does he have a pretty unique place in the Bible, but also I'm much more likely to be those kind of moaning and grumbling Israelites. Who am I in the story? I'm more likely to fit into their shoes. Another classic example is of David fighting Goliath. Well, who am I in that story? Am I God's promised rescuing king like David? No, I reckon it's much more likely that I'm the Israelites who are far too scared to go into battle. I should be trusting in God's promised king, who is Jesus. The lesson to learn is to trust God's promise of rescue and not that if I believe in myself, I can defeat all of my enemies just like King David did. Well, that was the Who Am I tool, or sometimes called the Copycat tool. I hope that was a useful one. I'm looking forward to coming back same time next week.